Good morning, everybody. This is Walk the Dog with Riot Mort, and it is Friday at 7 a.m. Getting a nice normal start here on the Riot campus. It is my last day here. I get to fly home around 4 this afternoon. I should land around 7 and get to go home. Hooray! I miss home. I don't like sleeping in hotels. It's quiet, it's lonely. So, but yeah, overall, been doing good stuff here. Got a lot of the work I needed to done, mostly caught up. So, yeah, things are good. I've also been slowly picking up ranked games, and I'm at like 500 and something LP, 570 LP or something. It is shocking to me, continues to be shocking to me, how many ranked games I play, and I will just sit in first place at 100 health on 4-1, and then bleed out to a third, which is, fine, but gaining LP has been not that challenging so far, and the amount of people that are just unwilling to play, like, I heard BoxBox's rant yesterday about how there's only 3 playable comps. And I have to thank him for that rant, because when he says stuff like that, everyone believes it to be true, and then everyone contests each other for those 3 comps, and I get easy seconds and thirds, and I go up LP. So I'm loving it. I'm a big fan, big appreciator. So, yeah, that's been good. So we'll see. Who knows? I might keep going, I might not. I'm not really pushing myself that hard. It's more just, hey, I have time, I'll play a game and see how it goes. And so far it's going well. The coaching from Raptor helped me remember the things I need to continue to be a little more stingent about, right? Things like item slams and stuff like that. So, yeah. All right, one thing before we get started. Yesterday, Dino asked me for $5, and I said I'd give it to him. $5. Now he trying to look for he asked me to hide this, so if any rioters are watching, to go on a scavenger hunt to find $5. So right here near the lunch area there is a trash can down here. I am going to put the $5 under the trash can, so you just lift it up a little, and there's $5. So if anybody finds that $5, post on our Discord and let us know. But Dino has asked me to hide that $5. So there you go. Good luck, rioters who are watching this, if anyone is. All right, questions. We've got some questions today, as always. Some good ones today, actually. The first one's a interesting one. So what was your experience like as a manager for the first time? When did you start becoming somebody's manager? What was that like? Did things change at Riot? Is it different? Oh, good, the leaf blower's out. Yay. Does this campus really need to be leaf blown every freaking day? Whatever. Okay. What was your experience like as a manager? So, interestingly enough, I think one of the things I benefited from when I worked at NST, Nintendo, it was a small company of about 40 to 50 people at any given time. And as I moved up the ranks, it's interesting because at Nintendo, I'm trying to actually compare it to Riot, where it's like Riot, there's a very clear, like, this is your manager, they fill out the paperwork. Nintendo wasn't quite like that. Nintendo was more, hey, there are 6 designers at Riot, and one of you is the lead designer. And so technically the lead designer is your boss, but it wasn't like a direct management. But at the same time, Jesus Christ, this leaf blower, man. At the same time, what ended up happening was once my boss left and I became the lead designer, essentially I was the boss of 5 other designers. And so in a way, I was their manager. But we didn't have all the process stuff of like, make sure you have like direct one-on-ones and everything. And like, my calendar wasn't that full of meetings and stuff like that. It was more just, we're a tightly knit team of 5 and I'm in charge of that tightly knit team of 5. And I'm, coaching people and talking about that. I'm trying to remember, like, because we didn't have one-on-ones. A lot of stuff at Riot was like very foreign to me when I first got here. But, I still did like hiring, for example. And I hired Chris and Paul and Phil, who was already there, I became his sort of boss. But like, really the thing is, it was just sort of like, make sure that we're all on track, make sure we're making good stuff, make sure they have scheduled time off, not that big a deal. Fast forward to Riot, I started kind of on a solo project as well. So I didn't really have direct reports for a while. I had one, but then she got moved to a different team. And then, when did I start getting a lot of direct reports? Because on League I was on Pi, and there weren't a lot of designers on Pi. I wasn't Feeney's manager or anything like that. Hi, Squirrel. I don't think I really started getting a ton of direct reports until TFT. So, in a way, I haven't, but like right now I'm 7 people's direct manager. So it's not a big deal. But okay, all of this aside, history lesson aside, your question is sort of like, well, what's it like to become a manager? You were nervous and things like that. And hilariously enough, I actually think being a manager is pretty easy. There's a couple of things to keep in mind, and as long as you keep these things in mind, you'll be a decent manager. The first off is one of these golden rules that everyone always talks about, which is treat other people the way you want to be treated, right? Make sure anytime you have your report and you have to give them good news, bad news, feedback, whatever, how would you want to get it, right? Like, pretty simple. If your boss was coming to you and saying like, hey man, you got to improve, how would you want that feedback delivered to you? Likewise, if you're, somebody who really, really wants career progression and is really hungry for that feedback, how critical would you be to that player or to that person, And so generally, as long as you, okay, my God, the leaf blower's in my direct path. This is great. I love it. Frickin' leaf blower, man. Whatever. So, sorry, I'm super distracted by this leaf blower. It's driving me nuts. Anyway, treat others the way you want to be treated. Pretty simple concept, and generally will get you pretty far. The second one that I find to be really, really valuable is kind of like I've talked about with leadership before, where it's like, give credit for the good, take blame for the bad. With your direct reports, in private, you should be their harshest critic, but in public, you should be their biggest defender. And what I mean by that is I'm gonna pick on Kent here, and hopefully he never listens to this because he'll get all embarrassed. But like, Kent's one of my star performers. I think Kent does great work. I think he leads his team well. Anytime I have a one-on-one with Kent, I'm usually giving him pretty like, hey man, you're doing good here, but you got to fix this. You got to look at this. Here are things you might not be thinking about. Like, I'm giving him a ton of harsh feedback and things to improve and stuff he could be working on, right? Now, if you looked at it from a percentage standpoint, I would say in our one-on-ones, 70% of what I tell Kent is, here are things you need to improve. Now, that is not to say that 70% of Kent's work needs to improve. That's not true. It's just Kent's somebody who really wants to grow and keep getting better, and he wants that feedback. Now, fast forward to, like, let's say we're doing one of those things where it's like, hey, all the senior managers get together and talk about our reports, and now it's time to talk about Kent. I don't talk about those 70% of things. I'm not sitting there going, yeah, well, Kent didn't understand that this champion would... No. In those meetings, I'm like, dude, Kent's crushing it. Kent's doing great. Here are the things he's awesome at. Here's maybe some tiny growth areas. Like, it's almost like when you're in that one-on-one with them, focus on making sure that they're improving, because that's kind of your job. but also make sure they're getting a lot of credit, right? And so I love, end of year when I get to go up to somebody like Kent and go, here's your good review. Here's all the good stuff you've been doing. But if you want to keep getting better, here's stuff to keep looking at, and that's kind of the structure I do. And that way it builds trust. Two other things I can think of that are really helpful here. The third is that, and this one again should be fairly simple, but it's be as honest as you can. And this comes into play for a lot of different reasons. But if you're being honest, you build trust with your report, and they know you have nothing to hide. Because a common behavior of people is like, I'm trying to think of the best way to illustrate this, but I remember when I wasn't a leader at Nintendo, and all the leaders would go into a room and close the blinds and talk about secret stuff. You're like, oh my God, it's such a big deal. I wonder what secret stuff they're doing in there, which kind of like creates this distrust. But then when you become a leader and you're in those rooms, it turns out all it is like, oh, they're just doing weekly updates, and these meetings are actually nothing and they don't mean anything because people are paranoid, right? And people are scared of bosses. And when you become a boss, it becomes a thing that like, now you're scary and big and mean and stuff like that. So that can end up mattering. So with a lot of my reports, I'm extremely honest, and they're like, hey, why are we doing this? And I'm like, here's why. Here's everything I know, I don't hide stuff from my direct reports. They can ask me anything. Now, obviously, there's going to be some exceptions, right? Like if there's something you are told not to tell or, that's different. But generally, for the most part, they may just not be informed. And so you're happy to inform them. Now, all of this is important because the final thing I can offer here is when you give your direct reports a review, rule number one of giving your direct reports a review is nothing had better be a surprise. Everything you've been talking about up until that point in the year, they'd already better know because you'd better been talking about it throughout the whole year. And because of that, a lot of my yearly reviews I do with my direct reports are actually like really short and really boring. It's like, hey, remember that thing I said you need to work on? You still need to work on it. See, it says it right here on the page. And all the stuff you did good that I told you were doing great on? It says it right here on the page. Any questions about all the stuff I've been telling you for a year? Nope. Okay, great. That's how your review needs to go. Because if anything got a review as a surprise, you done fucked up. So that's the best I can offer. I've been jabbing about this for a while. But yeah, TLDR, treat people the way you want to be treated. Be honest with them. Be their supporters. And don't lie to them. Don't surprise them. Not that hard. So, all right, next question. How do we collect objective feedback? So this is a question of like, how does our insights team actually figure out objectively how things went? A big part of this is we're kind of lucky because TFT and Riot games, we have a lot of players. Let's just say, and this is a fake number, it's a very fake number, but let's just say you had 1 million players. Again, that is not the real number. Please do not quote me. I am using that number to illustrate a point. Let's say you had 1 million players. If you send out a survey to 200,000 of those players, and 10% of them answer it, 20,000, that's actually a decent sample size when it comes to like surveys and interviews and things like that. So then you have a 20,000 survey results. And in those surveys, you might ask questions like, hey, how did you feel about the set 14 mechanic? Did it make the game more or less fun? Right? And you can have a sample size answer of questions like that. And our insights team works on those surveys and comes up with questions that they think will help inform us about the set. Some of these questions are questions we ask every set, so you can get a comparison where it's like, okay, the set 14 mechanic, X% of people said made the game more fun, but the set 13 mechanic, greater than X people said the mechanic made it more fun. So set 14's mechanic was not as good as 13's, right? Like, that's an example of how you could do that. So those surveys you get that pop up, if you want to give your opinion, take those, because we definitely look at those and read those. Every year after every set, the Insights team puts together a set report that kind of talks about all those things and those survey results and stuff like that. So, but yeah, and so we'll ask questions like that. The other thing is, like, during the set development, the Insights team will meet up with the set team and go, hey, is there anything that you want to ask about specifically that we're going to need to know? You know, and so we might have, so using set 14 as an example, maybe it's like, we could talk about hacks in general, but maybe we want to ask about specific hacks. So we might break that question down into, well, what did you think about the split gold hack? Or what did you think about this hack? You know, and like, those questions will get answered. The other thing that allows us to do is we can break down those survey results by region, right? Like, let's say, again, fake numbers, but let's say you have 1 million players who are in China, and 1 million players who are in Korea, and 1 million players who are in Europe, and 1 million players who are in US, whatever. And then you split that up and you can go, oh, well, players in the US hated hacks, but actually players in Korea kind of liked hacks, you know. And again, these are fake results. I'm literally making stuff up. Do not read into this, because I'm not supposed to share the actual results that we had and know, you know. But that's sort of how we objectively collect all this data, is we gather it all and then use that. Now, all of this is also in conjunction with the stuff I do, which is like read various forums, things like that. We'll also have different regions send us their reports, right? Because like, I can give you a pretty good idea what NA players are thinking and maybe some EU players, but maybe not as much Brazil or Korea. And so our community managers there can gather sentiment and sort of go, oh, yeah. And like, we might go, oh, Brazil's having the same problem with Zeri that NA is, but China actually has a Senna problem. And it also gets really interesting because a lot of our China players play on Fight for the Golden Spatula, and they could have a very different experience as well. A common example of this right now is like, I'm pretty sure Senna is basically unplayed in NA and rest of world. But like China, for example, right now thinks Senna's OP. And it's like, interesting, what's the difference? What's going on there, you know? And we can dig into stuff like that. But all of that helps us stay informed about the various parts of the game and how things went. And like I said, the biggest comparison is set over set. So like now when our Insights team does this report, again, it's like, did the mechanic make the game more fun? And you can literally see this graph where it's like how people answered for set 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and you get a comparison. It's like, ooh, our best mechanic was set 12, but our worst mechanic was set 13. Again, fake numbers. So, which is kind of valuable. And, you know, and then from there, once you have that data, it's like, okay, but let's talk about like why they feel that way, right? And that's where you can start to hypothesize. And it's like, oh, well, maybe they don't like it because this, or, you know, for example, I'll be blunt with you. Set 14, this is actually a real result. I want to be clear. Set 14, the balance was called out pretty heavily in the survey. Well, that's because the survey was done during patch 14.2. Hollow Bozeri patch. Yay! So it's like, yeah, it turns out the balance is pretty bad when a bug can screw it up. And like the lesson learned here is like, bugs are bad, you know? But it's still an important thing to quantify and talk about how like, yeah, you know, and we could actually compare it to set 12 and like, how did it compare to set 12's balance? Well, actually, from the survey results, it's actually pretty similar, you know? And it's like, well, that makes sense. Set 12 was Syndra, you know? And it's like these outliers can have a pretty big impact on initial survey results. You know, and like that's an example of a learnings that you can get from these surveys. So there you go. All right, next question. What is the design space for high risk traits? You know, and this is the difference between like Fortune, Mercenary, Cypher, Heartsteel, etc., etc., etc. This is actually one of the hardest things to design in a set for TFT. Yeah, this is a hard one, because when we made Fortune, it was pretty simple. It was like Giovanni had a really good idea, which was like a trait where the more you lose, you have to take a risk and lose a bunch, and if you can lose a lot, you get a big reward. That trait changed TFT forever. That trait was very, very successful, especially in our eastern regions, but really in general, right? High-risk traits are very, very fun, very popular. Every survey, we were just talking about survey results, every survey was like, oh my God, this stuff's amazing. And Fortune kind of became the new bar for like intense high moments in TFT. Since then, we have been trying to innovate on that space every set, right? Sometimes it's light stuff, right? Like Mercenary was really just Fortune, but you get to see your rewards as they build up. Okay, cool. Set 5 was Draconic, which was a different version where it was like you get these eggs. But we learned from set 5 that like, well, no, the fun of a high-risk trait is the giant payout at the end, not getting that payout little by little, right? And we kind of screwed that up again with, I want to say Lagoon. There was one other trait that was like drip econ. I mean, Yordle to some extent. But getting your rewards as a drip, way less fun than getting your rewards in one giant cash out, right? Like players want that big pinata moment where they open the pinata. And so then it was like, okay, well, we can keep doing Fortune. But, you know, we can only do Fortune so many times. And so we would try other things, each time trying to improve on the equation. In development, I'll tell you that we've tried stuff where, like, for example, Chem Baron at one point allowed loss streaks or win streaks. We tried that just to see what it was like. And don't get me wrong, on paper, we definitely had called this out. We didn't have to play test it to prove it, but we did just to be sure. Turns out if you let somebody just win streak and get a high big cash out, nobody wants to fight the guy who has 100 health on 4-2 and just got 3 Radiant items. That's not fun. That's not high risk. That's just snowballing and hitting the lobby. Heartsteel was a specific attempt to, because the thing we kept finding with Fortune is players love this trait, but they can only play it if they get it by like 2-2. And so after 2-2, this trait's essentially dead. Nobody touches this trait. Heartsteel was an attempt to fix that, where it was like, no, we're going to have it like have this point system that like scales up over the game. And actually, because of vertical, as long as you could get like 5 Heartsteel by like 3-2, you can actually get some big stuff. And when Heartsteel shipped, it was like that part was good, but players were still like the extreme wasn't high enough. My big giant cash out was like kind of boring because I can only do it for 4 turns. So that's where we had to last minute add the double or nothing feature, and that fixed the problem. And now Heartsteel is one of our most popular. But here's the other challenge with these traits and the design space we have at them is, what is high risk? What can you actually risk in TFT, right? Like risk has to come with a trade-off. And from what we've been able to figure out, the answer is health. Health is basically the resource you have to do that, right? Like we tried a silly version. One of our designers had a silly thought where it was like, well, what if you risk econ? And it was like, you know, you keep your econ low, or like Punk was a version of this where it was like, you spend rerolls and you spend money and that builds up this thing and then you can cash that out. And it's like, well, that's not a risk. That's just, you have to do it, right? Like you just follow the steps. There's no way to counter that. It's not that interesting. You just press the buttons and then eventually when you get low on health, you go, I'm done. And if you spent 80 gold on this, the return has to be much higher than 80 gold. So yeah, it just became this math equation. Pastry, Sugarcraft actually went through this as well, where it was like, during development, it was like you were spending gold to build recipes, and that just did not plan out. It was just like, yep, I sure am going through the motions. Woohoo! So the biggest limiter in terms of innovation in the high risk spate has been the only thing we have to risk is health. And so they end up all feeling kind of similar, which is like, yep, you spend health. That's not to say we don't have some stuff cooking that we think could help as well, but that's been the biggest challenge. And given the popularity of these are incredibly high scrutiny. Now, what I'll also tell you, and again, just being transparent here, is that like, because of this is the kind of trait that like we've accidentally given to like some of our junior designers before, and they just spin their wheels. Like, it is, designing a high risk trait requires such a fundamental understanding of how players are going to play the game and how they're going to interact with it, that it's like, holy cow. Cypher, for example, I will tell you that the designer who worked on it at first, you know, the augment 10,000 IQ, where it says like, guess you're winning or losing. That's actually what Cypher was going to be initially. Cypher was this like, you bet on yourself each round, to try to like, that was the initial pitch. Bet on yourself each round, and if you bet successfully, you go up or down. And the reason we ended up pushing back against that was like, well, if you have to bet against yourself, the sure bet is open fort and lose, you know? Which just kind of came back to, well, it's just loss streak, you know? So that ended up becoming an augment. We thought we'd try something different with that, but yeah, it's a tough design space. So, but that being said, again, it's a very popular one, so we have to keep innovating in that space. You can only reprint Fortune and Heartsteel so many times. So, yeah. All right, let's see if I can get to the last question I had for today. Oh yeah, this was Kwiatkowski's question. How does it feel to go from that side game mode that people are like, oh, it's just a game mode in League, to the biggest strategy game in the world? This one's a weird question, because behind the scenes, what I'll tell you is, yeah, we definitely one of Riot's big games now, which is kind of cool. And it definitely feels good to be successful and sort of validated that your design decisions have made the game better. That feels good. But at the same time, as we've grown, what is important to TFT has changed a little bit, right? Like, back in the days when it was a team of 40 and we were just like, make sets good, make game good, that's kind of all I really focused on. I'm not exaggerating when I'm just like, my job is to make sure the game is fun. If the game's fun, great. If it's not, I don't care. Like, we got to fix it, right? Now, as the TFT games grow and our team size has grown, the answer, we don't put 200 people and say, go make TFT good. What we do is we go, hey, let's expand. Let's do cool stuff, right? Part of this could be, look at these new chibis we're making. What's the Unbounds, right? Like new product types where it's like Unbound, or new game modes, right? Like Pengu's Party, or hey, Talker's Trials, right? Like, you're expanding as opposed to focusing. And in that expansion, the team has gotten very large, and a lot of the things we focus on now are stuff that I'm not as equipped to handle, right? This is what my boss does. My boss is the one going around talking to these teams who are expanding our game. Whereas the actual just like make the game is kind of like, this isn't actually true, but I'm just going to say it, is like almost like taken for granted, where it's like, oh yeah, we know TFT is great. It'll keep making sets. It's fine. That's on autopilot. But we've got this other stuff we've got to grow. And it's like, oh, dang. Okay. So, which kind of leaves it feeling weird to me. Because my belief continues to be that while TFT is great, we do have to continue to innovate in that core gameplay space. We can't just sit on our laurels. We got to come up with cool stuff. And I think 14 actually kind of shows that a little bit, where it's like, 14's a solid B tier set, but it's just a B tier set. And if we ship 4 B tier sets in a row, players aren't going to be happy, So, I don't know. Overall, though, it does feel good, right? And it's like the best. I mean, look, if you're a video game designer, what's the best you can ask for? To be a key contributor to a game that's wildly successful and keeping a giant company like Riot, helping them stay in business. I got no complaints, right? Like, that's great. That's good stuff. But it's definitely a mind shift set. And like I said, for a while, it's felt like TFT has kind of outgrown some of us who have been on that team since the beginning and has become this much larger team. I don't know. Someday I'll tell more of some of that stuff, but like, and don't get me wrong, it is for the better and it'll make some cool stuff. But yeah, like, trust me, the team is like my boss and all the people that he's working with and all the cool stuff that's happening that isn't just core gameplay. There's a lot of really cool stuff happening. So I think you guys will love it, and I think it's all good stuff. It's just, it's weird to relinquish that control and that touch that you have on a game where it's like, okay, that's how things are going. And then the other thing too is, you know, if you've been around as long as I have, you remember the, like, during set 3 and 4, Kyun's calling it a dead game and Lobby 2 saying like TFT's gonna die and whatever, and it's just like, just another friendly reminder that most pro gamers are pro gamers because they're very good at a video game. This does not make them educated. This does not make them well informed. This does not make them have any idea what they're talking about. And just another example of that. And this is true, not just, I'm not picking on our TFT players, I'm picking on every pro gamer, right? You can go to any scene, and it's like, I listen to some content creator player say like, oh, here's how I would fix the game. It's like, you have no idea what you're talking about. Go be good at the video game. I'm proud of you for that, but shut up. So, anyway, that's kind of it. All right, I'm going to go wrap this up, pack all my stuff up, say hi to folks today, do a little bit of work, and then go home. I get to go home. Saturday stream will be a little late probably because I get home late and I want to sleep. And then Sunday stream is patch rundown, and I finally get to talk about the curveball. I'm excited to talk about the curveball, and Monday's walk the dog. We'll probably talk about it in more detail. But yeah, so all right, that's gonna do it for me. Until next time, take it easy.